Board members, thank you for getting through that. That was a long one. That was a long agenda item. So at this point in our meeting, we are on agenda item 9, and we have Chair Earl of the Standards and Assessment Committee, and we're going to turn the time over to her. So Chair Earl.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. We're going to be really snappy on this. I think we've worked hard in standards and assessment over the last, a couple of months actually. We've had the CTE standards that we've been working on. And so the motion before the board is that the board approves the CTE course standards draft 2. And I do have 2 amendments to that. If that would be appropriate, I could move those now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and
okay, let me pull that up. Does someone have that in the documents? I think they're maybe looking for it. It's 2 simple amendments. The one, it's to strike clean from Clean Coal Technologies. And is someone pulling this up? You're looking for it? Andrea had it. Do you have it? Okay. And I'm going to move them together, and then if someone wants to divide, they can. I don't know if they need to, but. And then there's just some cleaner language around, there's some AI about deep fakes, and we just put substituting and supported in place of 2. And as soon as that comes up, it'll be easier to recognize. And if like I said, I don't know who's working on that.
do we know what staff member is
someone working on that?
Greg, that's you?
Okay. Yes, we have the 2 amendments for CTE, and it's just to create some clarity. There's not really content change. Is it there? Can I see it? Do you need me to resend them? Okay. Andrea had them in context, so that's like so it's easy to see. Yes. I keep going down. No. This is what it would look like right there. Do you want me to forward that to you?
Nope. Right, look.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, so this is under this particular strand, it's explore various sustainable energy efficient building practices and the impact on the quality of human life. And underneath there, we added clean coal technologies. We're just asking to strike clean because it's very specific, and just leave it broad as coal technologies, which would incorporate clean. And I'm explaining. I probably need a second. Okay, so there, thank you. So it would be striking clean at just coal technologies, which would incorporate many different types of technologies. Then the second is under explore how industry, this is under digital marketing, explore how industry is adapting, creating content with AI. And then down under that it says issues to deep fakes, and we're just asking clarity and have it be issues surrounding deep fakes. So it's just kind of a clarity language. Okay. Is there, anyways, and I was seconded by Board Member Carey. So we're ready to vote on the amendments.
Are we going to be able to show those amendments up, or? Okay, so we'll wait just a second for those amendments to come up, and then we will take a look at them. Oh, yes. So staff is going to, it's Trish, right? She's our policy fellow, Trish, which I hope we'll definitely get to know Trish as we work with her through the legislative session. She is putting together a clean copy of what we just passed for board member compensation, and then going to make a copy for everybody so everybody knows what it is, what we did. Yes. Yeah, it's a board policy.
So we have a motion that Member Earl has put forth, is that right?
Motion
Yes,
and then an amendment.
And then
and-
an amendment.
Two
And
amendments.
they are going to put it on the board, and we will be able to, oh, it's there now. Go for it.
Member Earl, did you want to move move the AI and the clean coal
yeah, I
as one
just did-
amendment or as two
As two,
separate?
just together. If people want to separate them out, they're pretty simple.
one amendment. Thank you.
I think at this point.
Member Davis, you have a question? Maybe you're asking it right now, I don't know.
They're here. It's down, if they,
Yeah, so I've been talking to folks and had and shared some feedback, and I think a lot of it actually I just consented the standards committee chairs, and then they can decide what's feasible and not with staff also. I would today though like to possibly amend this to add vocabulary. Because I'm hearing that our students are much more successful on passing the exams at the end of these when they have vocabulary lists. Is it unrealistic? May I ask, Chair, may I ask staff, is it unrealistic to ask to amend for these courses to get vocabulary lists that are based on industry standards? Is that unrealistic?
Do we have a staff member who can respond?
some of them have it already, but I would think
Director
they-
Longhurst?
Yeah, a lot of them have it already.
Thank you.
So I don't know what it, we think I
Okay.
should say.
I almost said good morning. It feels like morning still. Good afternoon to Leah Longhurst, Director of Career and Technical Education. Thank you for the question. It is not unrealistic. However, the question we would have is, would that require us to bring the standards all back to you for approval? Or can we develop the list, add it, and move forward?
I'm comfortable developing the list, adding it, and move forward if the standards chair is, but I do have one follow-up question, Chair, if that's okay, and that is, how, just quickly, how do we know that these are up to industry standard? Because our students are expected, once they pass the credential, they could theoretically work in these spaces. So are you bringing experts in to help do this from different fields? Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We bring in industry professionals, post-secondary partners, and subject matter experts for everything we do. We do not sit in isolation in our offices and do this on our own.
Okay, Chair, then I move that we amend this to add vocabulary lists for these courses, and then those, I'm sure, will continue to be revamped as we continue through the cycles.
Is this a separate amendment from Member Earl's amendment? You know what I mean? Like, I know we.
It's
like,
an additional
people have
amendment.
amendments. Is this an amendment
It's-
to her amendment or
It's
an additional?
an
or-
amendment to add to the amendments. I could do it separately. Would that be better, Jenny?
I think we should probably
So make it
tackle
separate?
I think they are separate if I'm looking at this. I think we tackle Member Earl's and then we queue this
Got it.
up as a
That's fine.
separate, if that's okay.
Thank
So
you.
let's go back to what Member Earl has proposed here. We've had time to look at it. Can we have the language, can I have the language to reread the motion? Am I just using this to do that, or is there, I mean, sometimes there's like exact verbiage, so I can cheat and. Okay. Okay, Member Earl, will you look at that and make sure your motion is how you are wanting it, and then we'll put it before the board for a vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion before the board is that the board amend CTE Digital Marketing Technology course, or, excuse me, the motion before the board. We ready? Okay, the motion before the board is that the board amend CTE Construction Technology Course Standards Draft 2, Strand 4, Standard 3 to remove clean before Clean Coal Technologies. In addition, that the board amend CTE Digital Marketing Course Standards Draft 2, Strand 2, Standard 2 as follows: issues surrounding deepfakes. Let's go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously with Member Kelly absent. So, Member Davis.
I move that the board direct staff to add vocabulary lists to the CTE course standards that are in review or that are being approved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Hart. So the motion is that the board direct staff to add vocabulary lists to the CTE course standards draft 2. Member Davis, do you want to speak to that?
I already did.
Okay, then we have Member Bogus and then Member Earl.
So my question through the chair, sir, would be, what is the content of these vocabulary lists? Because I have a hard time voting for something that I have not seen.
Member Davis, if you want to answer that or direct it.
Yeah, it would be the vocabulary that is on the credential assessments at the end that they take at the end, the vocabulary for that. And I'm fine to bring those back or have a sample sent out to the board or,
So we would not
Whatever
be
members want to
we would
see.
not be creating those. We're essentially pulling those lists from what's already
Correct.
created.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Member Earl.
Yeah, I guess personally, I do want to. We're talking about an outside entity that's testing students, and then we're going to pull their vocabulary list. Is that? I'm just making sure I'm understanding. No,
Director
we're not.
Longhurst.
Okay.
Those assessments are USBE assessments. Our writing teams write those assessments tied directly back to the standards
Okay.
that you all approve.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
It's just a platform that is administered to give the test, but there are tests.
Okay, so in the future, we would probably make sure maybe those vocabulary words are attached whatever. So you're going to use the standards themselves. Those standards would reflect what the vocabulary is,
The vocabulary would reflect what the standards are, is how I would look at it.
except for this. Now then the answer is no. I couldn't vote for this because, well, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Because if it's the other way around, that the standards are going to be what we do. I mean the vocabulary is now what okay. I just want to make sure.
Standard.
Okay.
Can you clarify, Member Earl? Standards.
I can't
drive-
clarify. I tried twice.
Director
But
Longhurst.
thank you.
Can you clarify for the board what drives what? Do the standards drive the vocab, or does vocab drive the standards?
There we go. If I had a red light, I'd be happy to. The standards drive the vocabulary.
Okay.
So we would create the standards and then go back and pull the pertinent vocabulary that students need
Okay,
to
but
know.
we already created the standards. That's where I'm getting, right? You're not creating anything new. You're taking what we have here and okay, that's what I'm saying. But moving forward, they would interact together.
We'll do them together and bring you both at the same time.
I'm sorry, it was just important because I didn't want outside entities now bringing in their vocab. Okay, thank you. I'm good with that.
Thank you, Member Earl. Back to Member Bogus.
Sorry, Chair. I'm concerned about what we're actually approving here. Are we directing staff to bring this back to the board for approval? Because vocabulary usually comes with definitions, and I'm reluctant to approve the definitions of words without seeing it. I understand that they're pulling lists from the standards, but how are we defining these words? Because if I can't see how we're defining them, I'm reluctant to ratify that. Could someone help me?
Director Longhurst, do you want to answer that?
Yes, I'd love to answer it. I'm trying to think of what the answer should be. In many cases, the definitions will already be in the standards, or they are industry standard terms. And so we would use whatever the industry standard definition is.
Okay. Thank you. Member Earl.
I would just recommend, I think the standards are good to go, at least in my view, and that when they get the vocabulary ready, it's brought to standards and assessment for follow-up or review or whatever. So if there are questions, we can have those answered there. Is there
a motion? Did you put
There
together
is a motion. Did I
there?
not say it as such? Okay. That when they're completed, they come to the Standards and Assessment Committee for review or something.
Okay, so it looks like that's being typed into the motion.
Yeah.
There's a second there. Well, it's already second. Well, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. Member Bogus.
If possible, I'd like to, and maybe it could go without objection, to have the motion read that the board directs staff to prepare vocabulary lists for the CTE course standards draft 2, and when completed, present them to the Standards and Assessment Committee for possible approval.
Is that what we're doing right now already? Just clarity.
If I may, so the one thing that we're doing now is putting approval of the standards another 2+ months out. And where our sequence of timeline goes is that our staff will now be, immediately upon approval, we go straight to test writing. So without being able to have set standards and vocabulary lists now, we delay our test writing and we delay our assistance and our professional learning to teachers farther down the road. So these may not be ready for school year 26, what year are we in, 25, 26? That's the only concern. The longer we push this out, the less ready we are for next school year.
Sure. So let me see if we can get everything in order here, because we had a motion and then we had kind of either a substitute or an amendment, but we didn't second. We just had just a quick feedback to it. So is this the motion? This is the motion that I'm going to put before the body here, and then we can start debating it. The motion is that the board directs staff to prepare vocabulary lists to the CTE course standards draft 2, and when completed, present the vocabulary lists to the Standards and Assessment Committee for potential approval. So that's seconded. That's what's before the body here. So I had Member Davis and then Member Earl.
Yeah, just to address the time concern, I know Member Earl had a suggestion. I don't know if it's feasible with the timeline, but do you want to?
So in 2 weeks, we're meeting for legislative meeting. Those could be attached at that meeting for review. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Right. Oh yeah, it is. But I'm just trying to think of, otherwise it could be February standards and assessment, right? But the standards would be approved. This would just be reviewing vocabulary.
But we wouldn't put a question on a test about vocabulary that was not on that vocabulary list. So we very carefully follow those standards documents when we write test questions.
Okay.
And so I guess maybe I should clarify, because I'm making an assumption. If the vocabulary lists are coming back to committee, I assume then that means they also have to come to full board the following time in a future meeting from there.
It's a lot to think about.
Okay, I've got Member Booth, and then Member Green, and then back to Member Davis. And we also have Superintendent, if we'd like to hear from her.
I would definitely be opposed
I'll get
to
you.
holding up approval of the standards. They've worked hard. They have responded to a lot of feedback in our standards and assessment reviews, and those reviews have been very thorough. The individual staff members in each content area have been responsive and very professional. I think we've got to approve those. I don't want to hold up instruction for the students for a vocabulary list. I think the vocabulary lists are a great idea. I think they need to be added when they can be added, and they need to be reviewed by the committee and by the board eventually. But that should not hold up the process. I think test writing should begin. You're not going to be writing a question that doesn't fit to those standards. And the standards is where we're going to get the vocabulary list. And the definitions of those vocabulary words are going to come out of the standards. So I would say test writing can begin. You're going to test write exactly the way you always have based on the standards. And we're just adding this extra request that we want a nice list that includes all of the words that might be helpful to students to make sure that they've got that under their belts when they're approaching the tests that are coming up. That'll just be a help to them. But I would speak very strongly in terms of approving the standards that have been presented and reworked and responded to in a very effective way by your staff and by your office. So I'm hopeful that we're not going to get bogged down like we did on the last couple of little items. This is important. It's for kids. They need to start this in 25-26. So let's get it approved, and let's get the vocabulary lists back for approval as quickly as we can, knowing that test writing is going ahead, because those are based not on vocabulary lists, but on the standards, as are the vocabulary lists based on those same standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Booth. As we've been discussing here, and I know we've got Member Green and then Member Davis, as we've been discussing, we're discussing two separate things here, from what I understand. One, we're seeking to approve the standards. And so I'd love to move forward with that. And then we have the vocabulary list with it, which is a separate issue. So if it's okay with the body, can we vote to deal with the standards and then tackle the I don't know how to turn this on, but okay. Okay, so what's this motion then? Well, if this is it, if we're not going to divide this out, then we'll just keep moving forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
This is
Potential approval at the end leaves it up to interpretation.
So this motion speaks only about vocabulary lists. We need to go to the underlying motion.
There's no underlying motion.
Is there, there's some confusion on, please, Sybil. So, yeah, we've kind of just, it sounds like we've kind of combined some different motions that we're going. We're all passionate about this, and we've shared our thoughts on it here. From what I understand, we had a motion to accept the CTE standards as amended. We had the CTE standards, and then member Earl made 2 amendments. And then those passed. And so it went back to the underlying to accept the standards as amended. And then what we did was, that's when member Davis came in and said, well, I want to add some vocabulary. And then member Bogus said, when that vocabulary, if that vocabulary is added, I want it to go to SNA. Am I following so far?
Actually, Jenny wanted it to go to SNA. I wanted the motion to come back to the full board.
You want it to come back to the full board. So,
Which, I apologize for not speaking.
yeah, use the mic, please.
My intent was encapsulated because it then pushes it upward toward the full board.
So we're saying we want to go back and do the original member Earl motion and then jump down to member Davis's motion.
Yeah, we probably should have taken her motion.
We went out of order here. Okay. So let's put, there's 2 motions. It sounds like there's 2 motions before the board here, and we're still,
Without objection, move to postpone my amendment until after the vote on the CTE standards, because it's a tool that may not even be done before.
I mean,
perfect.
I don't know how long it's gonna
You're offering to postpone your amendment until after we, okay.
I know that I'm being petty here, but if we postpone this, we can't amend the standards after we approve it. Well, that's the language everybody is using. They're using the language amendment. And I would offer that if we're getting vocabulary lists, it is an amendment to the standards. How are we approving standards for which we don't have a vocabulary list and definitions?
Let's- do you wanna
It's
speak
like
to
we're, it just seems absurd on its face. I can't vote for standards when I don't know the definitions of the words you're using in the standards. That just seems like the cart before the horse to me.
Can I ask a clip? Oh, yeah, you have a. Yeah, I think it might be the same as mine.
Okay. Member Green.
It's on. Okay, so I know we've got a lot of discussion here. I guess this might be to here. First off, have we ever had vocabulary before? Is this a new thing? Sorry, new question. We need a. Yes.
Thank you for the question. At various times and in various courses, we have included vocabulary lists in the past, but not in every single course.
Is being asked to make vocabulary lists a new request for every single course?
That is a new request. Usually, we put the vocabulary list at the end of the standards document as an appendix, if you will.
Member Davis, as you share this wisdom, there you go.
that's perfect. It's an appendix. It will come later. It will be approved by the board. I think we move forward as it is. I'm just asking that it be added later as approved by the board. The vocabulary is embedded currently in the standards. It's just going to be formatted differently. It's just going to be pulled out for easy use by the teachers and the students, and we can approve that once it's done. So I'd still like to just postpone my motion until we take care of the other CTE standards, and then this can be added on as and to Member Bogus's point, I think it's perfect for the board to see it and approve it, make sure it does align with the standards. But it doesn't need to, it's already embedded in the standards. It's just a
Okay.
different format.
So we have the motion before the board then is that the board amend CTE construction technology course. No, that we've already done that one. It's that the board approves the CTE course standards draft 2 as amended. Is that right? Okay. Seeing no lights, let's vote. And that passes, 13 in favor, 1 opposed, which is Member Bogus. Okay. Now, are there any other motions here regarding any sort of vocabulary or not vocabulary? Okay, let's, okay, Vice Chair Hart. Oh, I know, but Chair Earl is,
Yes, we're on to
I'm-
number 2 here. So if you take a look, it's 9.4. This is requirements. Sorry, let me pull up the motion. The motion before the board is that we approve R277404, requirements for assessments of student achievement, draft 1 on second and final reading. And just a little background on that. So this is the Utah Aspire Plus and kindergarten changes, including revising the early reading grades to K3 and removing ELA from Utah Aspire Plus.
thank you. So the motion before the board is that the board approve R277404, requirements for assessments of student achievement, draft 1 on second and final reading. We have Member Bogus.
Like my name, sir. I know. I'm wondering on line 41 and 44, if someone can help me understand the distinction of English versus reading for the purposes of this policy, and perhaps was the idea of writing included in English? I'm just not tracking this all the way through to its logical conclusion, because it seems to me like, once again, we're at a difference without a distinction.
Yeah, that's a tough question. 5 staff members just left. See that?
I'm a
and one
scary
is here.
gal, Coach.
We have a staff member. Thank you. If you will respond to that, that'd be great.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sydney McCarty. I'm the Assessment Director of Assessment Accountability. So thank you for that question. We actually are removing the English portion of the Utah Aspire Plus assessment, keeping the reading assessment. The English assessment assesses things that are similar to what previously we tested our language standards. So things about grammar or conventions. Since those standards, when this ELA standards changed, those were grouped more in with writing, and we don't assess writing currently in grades 9 or 10, which is what the Utah Aspire Plus assessment is. Then we're no longer assessing those language standards, and so that assessment, that content is no longer aligned to our state standards in those grades. So we wouldn't be administering that assessment.
Follow-up,
Okay.
Member Bogus, are you good?
I don't have a follow-up. I do have a second question, if I
Sure.
may, while she's here. In line number 150, it says, an LEA may not prohibit. And then in 152, it says, based on the student's score on a statewide assessment. And I understand that they may not prohibit. My question is, why, considering a possible situation, we have a young person who may be a newcomer to our nation, they scored a 1 on their assessment, and all of a sudden, we cannot prohibit them from enrolling in an honors course for which they lack foundational background knowledge and language skills? I'm just wondering the why.
Yeah, and thank you. I think it's that can't be the only thing prohibiting them. So you can't just base it specifically off of assessment results, but that would be based on a team decision of what the students would be prepared for, but it wouldn't be specifically based on a summative assessment result.
May I move an amendment at this time?
That's in order.
I would move to amend line 152 to add the word solely after the word based. Based solely.
So the amendment before the board is that in line 152, the word solely is added. Is there a second to that? A second from Member Brinton. Can I ask, yeah, go ahead.
So one thought with that is if we include solely, then it would mean that people could use assessment results to determine if they were going to be accessing those like higher level classes. And I know that's part of discussion in the past about whether they want to have that or not. So I don't know if, I'm not sure that that would.
So this is may I, sir?
Yes, please.
So maybe I am incorrect. My understanding is that we're merely using language that would ultimately align with the practice. Because the line 150 says you may not prohibit, and if I heard correctly, your words were that they could not do it based solely, but according to this, they could. Without that word in there, I think we're wide open. Maybe I'm misunderstanding
Don't have it in front
what
of
you're
me.
saying.
I don't think that's the case. I think that's exactly what it says now.
Yeah,
is
I
what
think
you're
they
saying.
want to ensure that you're not placing students in IB courses or advanced or honors courses based on their performance on the state mandated assessments. So I think if you add solely, that opens it up to allowing them to enroll in those courses based on their assessment results.
Okay.
So I'm not certain what I'm missing here, but to me, you just turned that upside down. I'm not trying to be facetious or I just, to me, what you're saying says that they cannot use a statewide assessment score to prohibit access. That would be, so then what are they basing those assessments? And maybe we need to frame this language so that there's clear, because I do think that we should be able to use these assessment scores. Otherwise, we're putting kids and young people in places where they very easily may not have the foundational skills to succeed. And it's just a question. I hopefully that was
Yeah.
framed
Do you
as
have
a
a
question.
response for that? And I mean, I agree. It drives me nuts when we set up kids to fail, right? And we say, okay, yeah, you can take this calculus class with your pre-algebra background, right? And we'll get 7 staff members to make sure that that happens. 1 to do your homework, 1 to, do. So, yeah, how do we, in response to the member Bogus's concern here, what do we have?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I completely agree that we don't want to have students enrolling in courses that they're not prepared for to be successful in a course. I would have to talk with our counterparts in teaching and learning to see what's happening in the classroom as far as instruction and how they're enrolling students in those advanced courses. I just know that in the past there's been a little bit of pushback about what we're using assessment results for. So I think that's my caution with adding the word solely, but that could be part of the discussion.
So, Chair, to you personally, my question would be, do we need to send this or table this until we flesh out lines 149 through 153? Because to me, as I read this, it does not seem to articulate what we want it to articulate.
Yeah,
I've read it a few times while we've had this conversation, and I'm really trying hard to get it to say what you're saying, but I'm not there.
I mean, admittedly, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know either. Superintendent Dixon, please.
This has been a statewide conversation and even a national conversation for some time, and I think the intent is correct in that when this was drafted, and the conversations are, sometimes parents will come and say, I think my child is ready for this based on what I'm seeing at home and based on how they're doing their homework, because sometimes they don't turn their homework in and they might get prohibited from a class or based solely on a test score. So I think, I guess my question to you is, did a committee, those discussions happened in APAC and other committees, right? And wasn't that the intent, to not prohibit a student just based solely on a test score? Would that change the nature of it? Because I think the intent of that was to get at creating barriers for kids who might be able to succeed.
Yeah, I think that is part of the intent, was to make sure, and to make sure there's not barriers in place for students that may not have access. So if they performed poorly on the assessment, if that was the only determining point whether or not a student got into an advanced program or not. I think that was more the side of the initial language was around.
So, and yours, in Member Earl, sorry. Member Earl. Go ahead.
I think the language works. I mean, I think if you look at B, it's saying because a student was exempt from taking a statewide assessment. So there's two things playing there. So clearly, some assessments could play a role, but it can't be the primary role, right? And I think that's what you're trying to say. That you can use the assessments, but don't make it so that the assessments are the only reason why you get in, which is where the barrier comes from, or why you don't get in, or if you don't take the state assessment. So the very fact saying you can't, that if you don't take the state assessment, suggests that you could use the assessments as some point of a measurement. So I think the solely works.
Solely.
Does that feel,
I think so.
okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I think
But
that works.
Just as long as it's still not the main.
The only thing
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
used is the.
I would speak in favor.
Okay. Do you have a, no, we've already seconded. We're good to, we're going.
I apologize to you, Member.
So I think we're ready for a vote. If the
I know.
the motion
Especially with
before the
language,
board
seeing the language was helpful. Thank you.
is that the board amend line 152 to add solely to read as follows: A, based solely on a student's score on a statewide assessment. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that passes with a vote of 11-4, 3 against, the 3 no votes being Vice Chair Wood, Member Reel. Oh, there's only 2 against. That's my mistake. We have Member Hart and Member Kelly who are absent. Member Carey is here. Okay. Okay, so with that, we are looking at a motion before the board of the motion is that the board approve R277-404 requirements for assessments of student achievement data draft 1 as amended on second and final reading. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that passes unanimously with Member Hart and Member Kelly being absent at the moment. So, Vice Chair Earl, or I'm sorry, Chair Earl.
Yes. So the next motion before the board is that the board approves R277-606 Dropout Prevention and Recovery Program Draft 1 on second and final reading. And specifically, because we're updating our systems, we're removing UTREX from from some of our policies because we got USIMS in place and stuff. So that's what the changes are here.
Okay, we have a motion on the board that the board approve R277-606 Dropout Prevention and Recovery Program Draft 1 on second and final reading. Is there any discussion to that? Okay, Member Bogus.
I would love to know on line 74, does this create a dynamic situation where we're going to be ever changing? Because one seems specific while the other one seems dynamic.
And Member Earl, can you speak to that or do we need to bring someone up?
I I have no idea what you're referring to. I mean, I'm looking at it, we're moving UTREC's current superintendent specifications, so it leaves it broader. And I'm not sure what your question is. One more time.
Well, my question would be, so UTREC specifications are typically, like, they're delineated. Superintendent specifications, if I were to say, what are those? Where would I find that document? Or is it just like this some aloof ethereal thing that is either ever changing or no one really, I'm just genuinely wondering.
I think it's the latter. Yeah, it's aloof and, no, I don't know. Is it USIMS? I think it's USIMS.
So should we say
Right?
USIMS
Can
as
we
opposed
put
to
USIMS in there?
superintendent?
It's not, no, it's not.
Can you use your mic, please?
I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I just don't understand.
Sorry.
Deputy Superintendent Nui.
Yes, so this particular rule was as a result, was flagged from an audit that this, one of the particular data collection pieces in this rule was actually being used by Qualtrics because it needed more qualitative data than some of these other systems. At the same time, we are also changing rules to remove UTREC's language from the rules just to create more flexibility as our systems change, as the names of our systems changes, that it has that flexibility. So in this particular rule, it is not USIMS that's collecting the data. It's a Qualtrics survey sent out by our staff. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Mostly, yes.
All right, so do you
So,
have
and
a?
I have a question.
Do you have a-
Well,
okay.
I appreciate Deputy Superintendent's response, but I still don't know whether it's dynamic or static. Yeah.
Superintendent Jones.
Superintendent, or Deputy Superintendent Jones, dynamic. Does that answer the question? It could change. That's really the purpose of this rule, is to provide flexibility as we develop systems, and then we don't have to wait, a year or so to get changes in place, terminology, application.
Okay, we're going to go to Member Hart and then Member Earl.
So this is an element that has to be turned in a Qualtrics survey instead of on UTREC's. Is that what you're saying? When will that change to something other than Qualtrics? When will that be built into our systems?
I don't know that it will. Could I have staff that is over this particular element come answer that question?
Would you like to come? Yeah, come to the front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Benji Carrier with Dropout Prevention. So the answer or the question, so we're using Qualtrics right now. So this is, in statute, there's some questions that we're asked to put out to LEAs, asking them different questions on what they're doing for dropout prevention. Currently, we're using a Qualtrics survey to do that. Some of the questions that we ask, we can't get just strictly from data and statistics. I mean, certainly we know some numbers of like how many dropouts exist, but there are questions of like, what are they doing? Like, what third parties are they using to help mitigate their dropout prevention? What kind of like, I mean, a lot of schools are using like different online credit recovery programs and whatnot. So we ask those questions currently through Qualtrics. Currently, they're not required to answer. I mean, I think we got 30, maybe 30 responses this year. And the statute doesn't say that they have to tell us. But so that's what we're doing currently.
So this is a request from legislature to report. It's like one of our report to interim, the blah, 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 blah. Okay, so why can't we program it into our system so that we could ask those questions?
I'm not a programmer. I don't know.
No, I know. I realize this is, it's a kind of a.
Computer machines don't do a lot of things that I want them to do.
I appreciate your answer. It is very honest. But Deputy Jones, why can't we program this so that it's in one system?
Through the chair, Madam Chair, there's no reason why we can't program it. My understanding of this particular survey is since it's not related to any measurement towards funding, it's a report, yes. And yes, some of the questions that are answered, the data could be used for it, but it's not associated with a grant per se. Is that correct, Benji? You're getting the data for reporting purposes, right? Not for financial purposes, which our systems are just that, right? We have embedded Qualtrics survey or the Qualtrics platform to support grants management, but in this case, they're using the Qualtrics survey to gather data that we do not readily have available through Utrex to meet reporting timelines or reporting requirements of the Utah State Legislature. Does that answer?
It does.
Okay.
I have a follow-up,
Okay.
please. So, so this has no financial implications? Just a second, he might. There's no financial implications for anything that might be answered. It's not used for a grant. Is it used internally to make decisions, or is it simply an interim report? How is the data used?
Would you like me to answer?
Please.
Yeah, so right now, currently, the data, I don't know how it's used. I mean, we report it per the statute request. The part that I can say is that in statute there is a formula that's used looking at dropout percentages compared to graduation rates, and over, I think, 3 years. I'd have to look at the statute specifically. And certain schools do get identified if they fall into this this percentage of dropout, that then we send them a notification that they've been identified, and then they have to disclose, like they have to choose a third-party vendor then to support them. Most LEAs report something like Edgenuity or some type of online credit recovery that they're using to help improve students' credits to get them back on track to graduation. But that's, I mean, as far as any type of funding or reporting, as far as the questions that we ask through the Qualtrics survey, I mean, to be completely blunt, we're just following what the statute says we have to do.
And yes, what I'm asking for is this part of a program per se, which I actually think it is. It's not just a report that we take up to interim and they read. There's things that happen based on this data. There's a state program of sorts. They have to do something, if something, or is this something we report the data in a bound book and we hand it and we say, thank you very much? Because if it's data that they just simply ask for, then I want to take it back to our reports and requirements. If it's data that we use for a program, then okay. But I'm trying to see what this data, what the purpose is, because I know how long it takes to fill this out. And these are the things that we need to be attending to help our LEAs. So I'm really not putting you on the hot spot. I'm just trying to figure out what we do with this data, and if it has where's it going? Are we the graveyard for this data, or are there actions that come from this data?
Yeah, so we do put it into the superintendent's annual report. So there is a part where it is, it's reported in that sense.
Okay.
And then so there's the Qualtrics questions that we ask.
Okay.
And we did have several LEAs tell us this is time consuming. What happens if I don't fill it out? We say there's no consequence.
I did not ask that.
All right. Well, so I think that's part of why we got so few in return.
And that concerns me too, because if we're asking for data and we need the data, we need a complete set of data. If it's an incomplete set, then we need to re-look at whether we need it, or we need to ask for it in a different way, or we need to code it into the UTREC system so there's a fatal error, which is actually fatal in some way. So I'm just, and maybe I need to take this offline, but this is the type of thing right here where we could make everybody's lives, including yours, easier. I just need a little bit more information about this data.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's because of the low response, that's part of why my team doesn't really do much with it, because it's not very helpful for us. The part that we get from data and statistics that Aaron Bruff's team provides for us, that's then where these schools get identified based on that formula, on grad rate and dropout. And that we use, I mean, there's action that's behind that, in us reaching out to the schools, letting them know that they've been flagged because of this, and then there's follow-up, but the Qualtrics part.
Okay, but do you see the problem? So if I fill out the data like I'm asked, I could possibly be flagged. But if I don't fill out the data like I've been asked, then I just move along my merry way, but my students may not get the services. So
Yeah,
there are, but it uses the same, I'm not wanting to belabor the point. I just think we need to.
Yeah, the Qualtrics survey, whether you fill it out or not, doesn't have anything to do with whether you get identified.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the reason that we ask these questions is because they're questions that are asking the LEAs what they're doing, and we can't see that from just straight data, because it's asking like what's essentially like, what's your plan? What are you doing to help?
Yeah, I know, it's a plan. I get it, and I can take this elsewhere. This is the crux of some of our issues with some of the things we ask our LEAs to do, and I really want to work on this in the next couple of years. Well, that's the other thing. If it was graveyard data, meaning we reported it up, it got put on a dead tree to be given to a legislator, a live legislator, then, to be clear, then I would make a motion that we look at asking for some sort of policy change. If it is something that we use, then we have to go the other direction and do something to make sure that our LEAs comply so that we have accurate data in which to make our decisions. But if it's some sort of gray area, then deputy, any of you deputies get that information and can solve that problem, I'll be glad to hear about what your solution is.
Okay, so Molly, are you taking that off the hill?
I am taking that off because there isn't a clear motion that could be made.
Okay,
because
perfect.
the answer is kind of it depends.
Okay, so Member Earl, you're next in line, and then Member Bogus, if you have
I
something.
just still don't have an answer to my question is all.
Maybe I don't have anything. Let Member Bogus.
Okay, Member Bogus, you wanted to try to ask your question again. I thought you asked whether it was data or whether it was dynamic
Well, it's dynamic data, but could we pull up the thing so we're looking at the draft? Because if I were an LEA reading this, I would be genuinely confused. So in line 65, it is the heading of 3, and it says an LEA that enrolls a designated student in a dropout prevention and recovery program shall, and we go directly to B because we can attach that to the 3, and an LEA that enrolls this student shall indicate that the designated student is enrolling in the LEA prevention and recovery program in accordance with current superintendent specifications. What are those? Should we say, and I'm genuinely asking because I'm happy to float a motion, should we say prevention and recovery program when requested through the Qualtrics survey? Like, I'm genuinely trying to understand. I understand that it's dynamic, it's ever changing, but what does this mean when I read it and I'm in charge of this? Maybe I was not as clear as I should have been.
Is there someone from staff that can address what those current superintendent specifications are?
She says with a really big
The-
smile like this.
Well, the email comes and it's this Qualtrics thing, and then I call over to the high school and I ask them the questions, and they tell me the student's name and the program they're in and the other details, and it's like a snapshot in a moment of time. I don't know how to, like, are you asking for the rule, are you asking for the survey?
How does anybody reading this know that they're required to
Oh, they wait till the instructions come.
So, Member Brockes, do you have a motion, or is
Yeah,
this
I
something
think I
that we
do.
could
How-
move forward?
I would like to
on?
move something forward because this, and maybe we can go and debate it. I would love to move that we amend lines 74 and 75 to strike the language in accordance with the current superintendent's specifications and substitute the words when requested. I don't know that we have substantially better clarity, but I think we are headed in a better direction. Now, somebody can disagree with me. I might get smarter.
Is someone putting that online for us? Oh, it's Deputy Superintendent Nui.
Hi, Deputy Superintendent Nui. So that we can put UTREX back in there. That's fine. And there is the manual that goes along with the UTREX. So those are the specifications that are used when inputting data into UTREX. And so that's well understood. We can totally put those back in there. And that is a fine amendment as well. Just wanted to give that option.
Yes. Do you want to unstrike UTREX?
You gonna speak to this, Christina?
I don't know that I want to belabor this. I just want people to understand what we're asking of them rather than a three-step process that they have to discern from words on a page. So if the words when requested is appropriate, if I maybe, and I'm listening to Member Hart, and I'm wondering why we're taking from one system and putting into Qualtrics. I'm genuinely perplexed, and I don't know, maybe nobody else is perplexed and I'm the only one perplexed. But my motion right now would be to strike that language and insert the words when requested. That seems to be the best solution at this time.
Do we have a second to this motion? Let's see if we have a second even to discuss it. Oh, I didn't hear you second. Okay, go ahead, Member Green.
I'm just wondering, and broadly to everybody, maybe the question is what needs to be asked? Are we not, if we feel we're just asking something, we don't know what we're asking, what do we need to ask?
So the question is in line. What they're asking is in line 73 and 74. But they're saying in accordance with these dynamic specifications, so in accordance with these ever-changing specifications. I don't know, I don't think it's fair in sporting language.
May I? Whenever you're ready.
Sure, Himes.
Thank you. And I see Member Earl has a light on as well. But I think for me, looking at LEAs, I know you were kind of back and forth, and you said, yeah, let's stick with this motion here. I would prefer to keep it as is with superintendent specifications. Either that or change it back, just reverse to say UTREX specifications. I think the LEAs are more familiar with what's been going on, so it wouldn't be a change if you're talking about, hey, if we don't want to make a big change, then let's just leave it as UTREX, which is familiar to all of our LEAs anyway, and keep going. And if we need to bring this back, we can. If say one of the board members wants to get out in the field and say, read this and tell me what it means, and then an LEA says, well, from my perspective, this is what I'm seeing, that might be beneficial. We could bring it back if necessary.
Would you like to amend her motion to unstrike Utrex?
Oh, Member Earl.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we unstrike Utah T-Rex.
All right, we have a substitute motion.
Because it has the specific, what's going to be collected, how much in there.
Okay.
So,
All right, and you've spoken to that. Do you have anything else?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Nope.
And the substitute motion to unstrike Utah T-Rex on behalf of Member Earl.
I'm going to use that all the time.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, that is a good point. We probably need to go back to the original, which would be remove the superintendent language.
Okay, so strike superintendent
Yep.
and
Yep.
unstrike Utrex. It's been seconded. All right, is there any discussion to this? Can we move to the vote? All right, we have a vote to strike superintendent and replace it with what was currently there, Utrex.
Cindy, do you want to come vote? No. Do you want me to vote for you?
My head is spinning on that whole conversation.
Oh, you're going to do well here.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously with 14, with Member Kelly absent. Do we have any other discussion to the motion, or can we go back to the main motion? Seeing no one, we'll go back to the main motion, that the board approve R277606 Dropout Prevention and Recovery Program Draft 1 on second and final reading. As amended, please vote. All right, that motion passes with 13 yeses, 1 no, and the no being Member Bogus. Thank you.
Chair Earl.
Turn it on and I'll. Okay, so the next one is for the board is that the board approves R277607 absenteeism and truancy prevention, draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, so the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-607 absenteeism and truism prevention, draft 1 on second and final reading.
And I just have just maybe a little narrative here. I've kind of gone. I wasn't at this part of standards and assessment last month, and so I kind of did a deep dive, going back and looking at the law, looking at what we're required to do, back and forth on this quite a bit. And then I reached out to my districts and said, is there anything that we need in this rule? Is there anything that would be beneficial? The interesting thing, and I don't know if this is the case with most of your districts, but my districts actually said, we have some structural things we need to work on. Didn't even have to do with students, didn't have to do with parents. And I'll give you an example. They came back last Thursday to school. They said that was one of the worst things we could have done. It was an automatic 2 absences for most of our kids, because it was right after, right? They should, structurally, we should have done something different. So a number of them said there are things they're working on before they would ask more of students or more of parents, that they have things to put in place. And that was a consistent response I heard. They're looking more intuitively inside of themselves, saying, how can we improve our structures in order to help with chronic absenteeism and these things. So I'm just sharing that as I have gone back and forth on, is there a way to strengthen this? Are there things to add to this? We pretty much took what was in law and our other rules and put it in here. We didn't take a lot of liberties, but maybe there's some other thoughts and stuff out there. But anyways, I'm just sharing my experience because I felt like I needed to do a little deeper dive on this. So.
Sure, thank you. We have, in our lineup, we have Member Bogus, Member Lear, and then Member Carey.
So I have 4 amendments, I believe, sir. The first one would be on line 11 and 12 to strike the language and resolving school absenteeism and truancy issues for each school-age child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA. And with a second, I would like to speak to that.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Member Green. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
So I understand that this is just in the authority and purpose section, but we are asking with this language for our LEA's governing board, and then through that chain, institutions and ultimately teachers to be accountable for solving a problem for which they are not responsible. And I take great issue with that. The parent is responsible for their children being in school, and this is to resolve the issue relies in the home. And while I understand that there are steps schools can take, I think it's completely inappropriate for this board to ask these individuals and this agency to be accountable for something for which they are not responsible. Not to mention, I don't think they can solve that problem.
Thank you. So the motion before the board is that the board amend draft 1 by striking the language on lines 11 and 12, and this is the language to be struck, and resolving school absenteeism and truancy issues for each school-aged 12 child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA. Member Lear?
I had something else. I didn't want to speak to the proposed amendment. I was more looking on as to the proposed amendment, if we get specific to that. All this is describing is what 53G 6206 says. So and resolving school absenteeism and truancy issues is what is in 206, then it's an appropriate paraphrase. And I couldn't do that quickly enough while Christina was speaking. So I guess I would ask that question to whoever was the rule drafter. I don't know if it was Ben, I don't know if it was Elise, but does 206 say what is in 11 and 12? If that's all right, Chair, to ask
Yeah,
a
Deputy
staff
Superintendent Newey.
Hi, Deputy Superintendent Newey. So yes, the short answer is, well, sort of. So on subsection 2, it says in the code that is being referenced there, an LEA shall make efforts to promote regular attendance and resolve school absenteeism and truancy issues for school-aged child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA.
So that, to my mind, that describes what it says in 206, and that's the purpose of this, the authority for writing this rule and the purpose of it. So we're just doing what the legislature has expected the board to do, and I don't think it's something that we can necessarily argue with at this point. We can ask the legislature, we can tell them that parents rule and this is nonsense. But until that's the case in the code, it seems like we need to say what the purpose of this rule is.
Thank you, Member Lear. So it sounds like, Deputy Newey, that whether this verbiage is in there or not, we're still responsible. Well, according to the law, we're still responsible. Yeah. So, Member Davis.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to pull the rule back up right now, but the little piece that I'm reading in the motion is different from what I'm hearing in the code, because the code is prefaced with, I think you said make attempt or something like that. Make attempts or promote or something. Make effort. That's different than resolving, because when I read that on the board, I'm like, yeah, nobody can resolve a truancy. I mean, it's like almost impossible to just resolve an absentee and truancy issue. But the code seems much more realistic and understandable. Yeah, if the child is like, well, there's a bully in my 4th period, so I never want to come. Well, that's something they can work on and make attempts to fix and resolve. And so the language is different. Does that reflect the language? I've got to pull it back up in the rule right now. I shouldn't have got out of that, darn it.
I have it pulled, Cindy.
Does it, what is it what is the preface of it?
It's actually almost a quotation.
So we have a motion on the floor then. And the motion is that the board amend draft 1 by striking the language on lines 11 and 12, which read, "And resolving school absenteeism and truancy issues for each school-age child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA."
I have a,
You still going? Or not, I didn't mean it to
gonna
sound
have
like
an
that, but you
amendment.
have additional, yes.
I think it needs to say to instead of and in that line of the rule.
Sorry, what's your amendment?
It needs to say to instead of and, because it says something like make an effort for promoting regular attendance and resolve the attendance or resolve truancy. It needs to say make an effort to promote regular attendance and
So the-
these truancy problems to
the-
do this.
The motion is to remove those. Are you amending to keep those and just switch the and to a to? Is that what you're, is
I
this
think
a
so.
amendment to amend?
I'm going to pull it back up. Yes, I want the to attempt to apply to resolve, and right now it's written as if it's a standalone. You can't resolve. It's almost impossible. But you can make an attempt to resolve concerns.
Yeah, do we have a motion?
Yes, that's my, sorry, let me go back. I'm trying to find where I get back to my, goodness. Oh, my goodness. An error occurred. I can't get back into Civic Clerk, but basically I want the attempt to apply to both the promoting regular attendance and the attempt to resolve. So it doesn't read as if you are resolving the truancy problem.
So if I understand correctly, your motion is to keep the language in, however, you would change it instead of saying promoting regular attendance and resolving school absenteeism, ... It would read promoting regular attendance to resolve school absenteeism, ...
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, let's get something that we can
Number are
debate
we
here.
on?
We have something on the floor already, and it's to strike those lines.
I don't think the lines are in code, but they're not written the same way they are in code. The way it's written in code sounds better.
Deputy Superintendent Newey?
If I may, if we just add in to make efforts into the rule as it is in code, so it would read that describes the duties of an LEA governing board to making efforts in promoting regular attendance and resolving school absenteeism. Would that do
Yes,
it?
that reflects what's in code. Making
Okay.
efforts is different than resolving. Thank you. That's my motion.
Okay, so that is, Member Davis, this is your motion up here. Let's just make sure it's aligned with what you were thinking. Okay. So the amendment to the amendment is to amend lines 10 through 12 to read as follows. Describes the duties of an LEA governing board in making efforts to promote regular attendance and resolve school absenteeism and truancy issues for each school-aged child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA. Is there a second? Member Lear seconded.
But don't you want to make it parallel and put promoting and resolving?
Yes.
Do you want to
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yes, to turn that microphone on, will you? Member Lear?
Parallel by saying resolving as well as.
To the
Oh,
making
just,
efforts.
okay.
And I'll just speak to the motion to say this more accurately reflects, I think, the language that's in code.
And it was new language.
And seems,
This was new language.
Okay. So this is the motion that's before the board, and it is that the board amend draft 1, lines 10 through 12, to read as follows. Describes the duties of an LEA governing board in making efforts in promoting regular attendance and resolving school absenteeism and truancy issues for each school-aged child who is or should be enrolled in the LEA. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote. So that passes unanimously with Member Kelly being absent. Let's continue on. I know that we had additional amendments as well. Member Boggess? And then Member Lear. So we're looking at Member Boggess, Member Lear, then Member Carey. Yep, we had, if we remember that Member Davis's motion was an amendment to amend, so let's go back to the, do we just have to vote on the same thing again, essentially? Okay. So we're going to vote on this again. Hopefully we'll get the same outcome. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Because yours was an amendment to amend. No, don't slow the process. We're almost there. Let's get it queued up. There we go. Let's vote. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Okay. Member Boggess, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would
Go ahead.
move to strike lines 46, 47, please. And with a second, I'd like to speak with the motion.
So the motion is to strike lines 46 and 47. And it's seconded by Member Green. Member Boggess, would you like to speak to that?
Okay. So, I think we have a series of issues with these lines. One, we are labeling a child for a parent's decision. And I just don't even know where to start with that.
Okay.
And the or gets me. Actually, if I could, sir, amend or without objection from the person who seconded the motion, I would like to strike the or from line 45 and then strike all of 46 and 47.
I think it would be part of that, yes.
Yes.
So,
And then I guess maybe let's put it to the floor for debate and I can sum at the end.
okay. So the motion before the board again is to remove lines 46 and 47. Looks like we have Member Lear and then Member Earl.
I didn't have anything to this.
Okay, Member Earl.
Yeah, I'm just double checking. I actually think this language is actually in code. And that's, some of these things may need to be changed in code themselves if we want the change. Anyways, let me see if I can find it. I think it's in 53G9 to 806. I'm 206? Did you say 206 or 806? Oh, sorry, 206.
This is an addition. Do we have
Dang it, I had it all
staff
copied
member
at home.
who may have added this under section code? And yes, please.
Yeah, Benji Carrier, now here for attendance support. So yeah, this is reflected in, and sorry, I guess we're looking in here, but this was a bill that was passed in last legislative session where they changed the definition of habitual truancy from 10 times to 20 days, and then added this language as well to be able to make a court referral, but only if the school had made 2 attempts. And so this was, we were just trying to update our board rule to reflect what had been passed in statute. So that's all we were doing.
Thank you. Member Carey, go ahead.
It is there. It's not in that.
Everybody started yelling at me before any mics were on.
Yeah. Oh, Chair, I was just going to ask, and maybe Vice Chair Hart has it, just where in statute, because that's what we're looking for. Where did we pull that language from?
I actually think it may be in 203, 203, number 5? Is that where you're pulling? Is that what?
And then my second question to the chair would be, line 47 references 53G 6206, and it may require a change because if it's not in that section, then obviously we have the wrong section listed. So, but it would start with what section is it in?
Oh.
Yeah. Michelle, please.
It's in 53G 8 to 11, that exact language. It's in the definition of habitual truant. It reads specifically, fails to cooperate with efforts on the part of school authorities to resolve the school-age child's attendance problem as required under 53G 6206. So it's the exact language out of 53G 8 to 11.
Thank you.
The same things that are in the rule, in the proposed rule, are in the definition.
So
in
then
the
why are
code.
we putting them in our rule when we don't paste law into the rule? Could someone answer that question for me?
Elise Newey, Deputy Superintendent. That is very much true, and we do discourage that in rules. However, because truancy, as maybe exemplified here in this conversation, is very complex and pulls from many different parts of code, we're having a lot of feedback from LEAs and from the field that our school leaders don't know these things and don't know where to go to find these different definitions of habitual truant versus a truant versus absence and chronic absenteeism. This is a big discussion and things that get mixed up very often. So our hope in doing this was that it was kind of a one-stop shop where school leaders could go to see everything that applies to truancy and absenteeism in one rule. Of course, this is a policy decision by this body, but that's our reasoning.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's obvious that we're struggling as well, right? So I think we do, if we do pull this, so the motion is to remove this language. And I guess I won't speak to anything else, but if it does stay, obviously we need to make some changes to the correct rule or the correct code. So let's look at the motion that's before the board and see if we can move forward with voting here. And the motion is, again, the board amend draft 1 by striking lines 46 and 47. And Member Bogus, go ahead.
At least we need to, is there a reason, may I query the deputy superintendent? Is there a reason we cannot just say habitual truancy as defined in, and just send them to the code line?
There's no reason why we could not do that.
Then, with that, I would move to strike. I don't know, we can vote and I can change my motion, or I can just change my motion right now. Chair, what would you prefer?
Can you make a motion and make a substitute motion? I mean, it's her motion, it's been seconded, if she
I'm happy
wants
to sub it
change
out.
Yeah, that's.
I would move
that's fine.
to sub the motion to strike a school age, or means, in line 41. Strike means a school age child, strike all through 47, and add the language is defined in 53G-8-211.
So the motion is starting on line 41. Under habitual truancy, we're changing a definition, right, to refer to code.
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Member Green. We have Member Carey and then Member Lear.
Thank you, Chair. And this is a point of question. It seems like the language we have here is duplicative, and I know I'm saying what everybody already knows, a 53G-8-211, but in the code, it's defining habitual truant. So all the language is the same, but in our rule, it says habitual truancy. And I don't know if that's just an oversight, or we really are trying to create a different category. And if not, I would suggest that there is no, what do you say, technical. So if there's no such thing, then I would just suggest that I'll make a motion to change that from habitual truancy to you already, okay. If that works, that's all, because I didn't want to prolong it. Thank you.
So procedurally, we have a substitute motion. Can we amend a substitute motion? Yes. Sounds good to me. So let's put this on the floor before the board then. Now the motion is that the board amend draft 1 by striking lines 41 and 47 and replace with 3, habitual truant means the same as defined in 53G-8-211. Member Lear.
I'm just concerned at a comment that was made by the staff, I think it was Benji earlier, that if this, and I'm usually a fan of doing exactly what's proposed, but if this is somehow confusing and new enough that it would be helpful to LEAs and those working in this field to have this definition that still is consistent with code, then I would vote against whatever the outcome is, against removing this. So I'm just, whoever said that it's been requested by LEAs, could you elaborate a little bit on that? And if there is anything else to say.
Sure. Chair. So right now, I mean, the main work that the attendance specialists are doing are meeting with LEAs. We have cohorts that we meet with them throughout the year where we're trying to do exactly what Member Earl was describing before of trying to support the LEAs in setting up the structures and looking at what their own rules and policies and starting with Tier 1 and moving through that. And so when we meet with these LEAs, it is something that comes up pretty regularly of all of these different, because there's several different codes that our rule says will go to this code and then go to this code and then go to this one, and I know it maybe doesn't seem like a huge deal to be able to click on something or look, but then you pull up the code and then you've got to read through it and try to find where it is in there. So this was an effort to try to get it on our board rules so that our school staff would have a place to go and be able to have it be clear and concise and not have to click all over the internet to find it.
I appreciate that, and I'm forced to repeat a quote that I've said before. Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. So even though we're supposed to mostly not quote the code, sometimes it makes sense.
So am I the hobgoblin in this? In there? I don't know
No, I
which
think
one.
the practice of foolish consistency
All right.
is the hobgoblin of little minds. I think that's Ralph Waldo Emerson, if I'm right. Yes. It's not as good as Boviate, but or
Okay.
Bloviate. Which one?
So,
I guess
again,
that would be a non-support.
the motion before the board is that the board amend draft 1 by striking lines 41 and 47 and replace with number 3, habitual truant means the same as defined in 53G 8-211. Let's go ahead and put that to a vote.
Didn't mislead you this time. Yeah, that I remember. I'm kind of nervous about that now.
That motion fails 9-4 with the yes votes being Vice Chair Hart, Member Carey, Member Hall, Vice Chair Wood, and Member Bogus. So we are, where are we at here?
We are still in a place where that code line needs to be updated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to,
that-
so we're just on the main rule here. So I know that Member Bogus has a couple more motions. I know that Member Lear is in line and Member Carey is in line. So Member Bogus, do you want to keep going or do we want to defer to others for a minute?
In the interest of efficiency, moving to amend line 47 right now would be
Prudent, and then I can wait my turn.
Throw that motion out for us. I think.
So
think
I would move to amend the code line in line 47 to read 53G-8-211 in lieu of what is presently there.
Yes, okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any objection to this? Okay, we're going to move forward.
I object to that.
Yeah, okay. Let's put it to a vote. Or unless you want to speak to it.
Can I speak to it? Yes, so
We got member, yeah.
the code that is there, the 53G-6-206, is the exact reference that is in law. So we would be changing what is in law. So the reference to that comes from the 53G-8-211, but the line, as stated, is what is in code. So we can't just change law because we want to refer to where the line is, the law is coming from.
Are you suggesting that staff got it right the first time? Is that what we're hearing? Benji? Member Earl, go ahead. I'm sorry, that was off
No,
topic.
and it is what's stated in law, but what it's referring to, keep in mind, we were looking at definitions. But the piece that it's referring to is the part that it wants referenced in using that, the reason why you would use a truancy. Does that make sense? So it's the application part where we were looking at the definition part. And yes, if you can't really reference something else because that is what's referenced in law, because it refers to how you apply it in code.
Yeah, it's a law referencing a law, but
Of the application of the
Right.
definition.
And so the verbiage is in fact in the code, which is
Yeah.
on the floor for amendment. Is that right? Is that what I'm getting?
No.
Well, I think, oh, you closed it. Vice Chair Wood had the code open. This is in 53G-8-211.
Yes.
And the exact verbiage from there is what we read here, including the section 53G-6-206.
And once again, the reason why is because you have the definitions here, but the application of that definition is in that other part of code.
Well, I get that. So what does the board want to do? Do you want to say, as required under section 53G-6-206, as suggested by 53G-8-211, right? I mean, we're referencing a reference here. Deputy Newey, please.
If I may offer a suggestion, we could just take what Board Member Bogus had suggested with the means the same as defined in 53G 8 to 11, comma, and then continue on with the rest of the definition. And so it would have that reference so that people could access it and know where it came from, but also see the entirety of the definition in the rule.
Is that in the form of some sort of motion? So we're looking at the bottom one. Is this the one that just failed?
So I took the same language.
Well, I think what Member Bogus has, the motion that Member Bogus has made was simply changing out 53G-6-206 to 53G-8-211. That's the motion that's before the board right now. And so with your clarifying language, I'd turn to Member Bogus and see if her and the second agree with that language. Okay, so essentially it all stays the same, but what we're doing is we're just amending line 41 by adding habitual truant, because the board needs to understand it's not a technical change. We are changing truancy to truant to match the law, and then we're adding means the same as defined in 53G-8-211, and then it goes on as is written. That's okay. That's Member Lear's motion.
I don't know that, I'm not trying to.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to verify.
And do we have a second? Or did we have a second? Second by Member Carey. We ready to vote?
Sure.
Member Lear, is there queuing that up? Are you in queue for the next? Okay. That passes unanimously with Member Kelly absent. We're still in the same scenario here. Member Bogus, and then Member Lear and Member Carey. Okay, let's move to Member Lear.
Now amendment, on lines 107 and 108. And again, this is probably what's intended, but let's put those words in there then. An LEA shall annually report, I'm reading from 105 to begin with to lead into this. An LEA shall annually report the following data separately to the superintendent. Absences with valid excuse, and I think we mean to say we don't want absences of saying Johnny Smith missed 15 days, or even we want to say, I think we mean cumulative student absences with a valid excuse and cumulative student absences without a valid excuse. And then I would say as defined in, so we get the LEA back to the definitions of valid excuse and not valid excuse. Does that make sense?
So are you asking for clarity, or are you making a motion
No, I'm saying
here?
I think we do not mean what is written, but rather, I think what was meant was we want an aggregate total of absences with a valid excuse and without a valid excuse.
Okay.
So that we are not outing students by name, even from between the LEA and the USBE.
So let's make sure that this motion suits your intent.
I would say student absences, just to be crystal clear. And then at the end of that, I would say, without a valid excuse, and cite the part of the rule that explains what's a valid excuse and what's not a valid excuse. And I think you can just do it once at the end of B. And I just had as defined in, but maybe there's a better way to say that. R277-607-2 parentheses 8.
Once again, Member Lear, will you just check the board and make sure that that's accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the motion is that the board amend line 107 and 108 to add cumulative student in front of absences and add the citation R277-607-28 to the end of line 108. Do we have a second on that? We have a second from Member Reel. Sounds like she was first. And then, do you want to speak to that, Member Lear?
I sort of did, but can I ask, I just am assuming that that's a correct assumption of what you're intending, that we get information, how we get information from LEAs, is that what we want? Any of the,
Deputy Newey, I see you looking back for, who do you want us to get? Do you want us to shout out a name? Okay.
I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to make sure, I mean, doesn't it make sense that that's what is intended? Okay. Yeah, because I don't think you want people by name. And that would be super tedious on both ends. Thanks. Yes,
Is that your
that's good.
answer,
I'm good.
your
Yes,
question answered? Okay.
I did.
Well, with that, let's move it to a vote. Member Davis, go ahead. Sorry. You guys were quick this time. Yeah, Member
Do
Davis.
they have to be cumulative?
Well, I meant
I mean, what if they show up one time?
aggregated is what I'm, so it's not Johnny Smith missed X days, Cindy Davis missed X days.
Well, that's not cumulative. That would be,
Is
you
it
need, you want aggregated data? Is that what you're saying? You don't want
Maybe
disaggregated
aggregated
data?
is a better word. I'm not,
You're not talking about that their absencers are in a row.
No, I meant all student absences with a valid excuse. All
Cumulative
student
student
absences without a valid
absences.
excuse. So if
Not
aggregated.
cumulative absences. Because it could go either way. You could be asking for cumulative student absences, which are the absences that are one right after another for so many
I don't
days in
think
a
there'd be
row.
any point in that, but aggregated is perhaps a better word. Consecutive, yeah, I guess that's,
Yeah, consecutive is in a row. Cumulative is all together.
but it's also cumulative if you add all students together. So you guys tell me, is aggregated a preferable word? What is? Yes. So yes, now we're going to change cumulative to aggregated and feel good about it.
Yeah, I feel great about it.
And Sarah's just bugging me to get on with it. I've got a-
Deputy Newey, are you responding to Member Hart's outburst? Okay, we have a motion before the board,
Total, I think either way.
and it The motion is that the board amend line 107 and 108 to add aggregated student in front of absences and add the citation R277-607-28 to the end of line 108.
As I know from,
Let's go ahead and vote.
they don't always ask their attorneys.
Well, they could always call us.
And then we have this kind of experience. I'm not sure what the board.
You actually told me this. You said, or Ashley Anderson did actually. She said, we are smart enough to.
Okay, this passes with the vote of 11 to 3. The no votes being Member Brinton, Vice Chair Hart, and Member Hymas. Oh, yes. Michelle, please.
We are just speaking with Aaron Bruff about what is actually reported by the LEA, and it is actually reported student by student.
Well,
but then what's reported out, I'll let you explain.
yeah, clarify on that.
Please, Aaron, go
Not
ahead.
superintendent.
Sorry.
Aaron Bruff, Director of Data and Statistics. And I apologize, we were working on other things. So every student's record comes to us, and so we know how many days they were enrolled and how many days that they had attended, and then we do basically the inverse and find out how many days, looking at that to do their absenteeism rate and if they're chronic absentee or whatever. So every single student, we get those records. Then, once we have those numbers, then we can go through and say, now what is the percent of students who are chronic absent? For example, what's your chronic absenteeism rate? How many students had absenteeism because of excused or unexcused? So we can go through and disaggregate and look at those numbers. So as we get it, again, it's by every single student enrolled, but then it goes into an aggregate as it starts rolling out. So you have to protect, obviously, the privacy of each of the students. Does that make sense?
Member Lear, go ahead.
I would just like to repeat that back to you to make sure I understand. So Aaron, you literally get from a school district the names of the students and how many valid excuses that student had and how many absence that student had without a valid excuse. Is that right? Literally. So there could be thousands of names in the case of Granite School District.
The answer is yes. And again, when you say names, I don't look at names, I look at numbers.
Okay, so ID
Student
numbers.
IDs, but yes.
SIS numbers.
And that's what comes into the data systems.
Okay, and then you split it out and do you do anything with it? Do you report back to Granite or anything?
We are in the process of updating our systems so they can get it more of a real time, but we're in the process of working on that project right now. But yes, there are reports inside of the data gateway. When they go into Utrecht's reporting components, there are aggregate reports in there where they show that information. So yes, we do feed this information right back to them.
Okay, I'm just wrestling with, do we need it to be clearer than what it is now, or do we just, given that answer, go back to the way it was written in 107 and 108? What's that? And I'm fine about it because we already voted on that now.
Right.
Or,
Well, the next motion, if we want to continue on with this, is the next motion is to bring it back by somebody on the prevailing side.
just gave me the wrong expert. What do you want to do, Matt?
Well, I voted no, so I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to have the original language, but
Okay.
I don't get it. choose because I voted no.
Well,
So
then you do because you were not, didn't vote on the prevailing side. So you are
I know
just.
you have to be on the prevailing side to bring it back.
Oh, well, then I'll
Yeah.
bring it back. I
Okay,
thought you had
perfect.
to be not, no, of course not. That, you're right, it's late in the day, sorry. I will bring it, yes,
So the motion is to reconsider
Yes.
the previous vote.
yes, by a
Okay.
person on the prevailing side.
Yes. So is there a second? Second. Okay. So let's put it to a vote. And again, the motion is to reconsider the previous vote.
All somebody needed to say was, yeah, we really.
That
I
just
know.
proved my exact point.
Carol,
So that passes unanimously with Member Kelly and Member Earl absent. So we are back to original language on lines 107 and 108. Do we have any, are we ready to move on, or is there another motion coming forward? I don't see any lights, so I'm going to go to Member Carey, who was next in queue for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. And Elise, I just emailed this to you, but it would be on line 64. And I'm basically creating a new line 64, which would just renumber the provisions under it. And my motion to amend would read,
As she's pulling that up, Member Carey, you're just adding, so we're going to have a new I or a new one, and then
Correct.
everything else will be shifted down?
Yes.
Perfect.
And my motion would be to add, as a valid excuse, any reason made pursuant to 53G 10205. And then if I could speak to that.
Let's make sure the motion is correct, and then, is that looks correct, Member Carey? So the motion is to amend line 64 to add a new I, any reason made pursuant to 53G-10-205. Do we have a second? Looks like we have a couple. Member Brinton was first. Member Carey to speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I read the rule, and I'm in support of it, I just think that, we give doctors a say in whether or not this is a valid excuse. We give our LEAs a say in whether it's a valid excuse. To an extent, we even give the dead, if there's a family death, they get a say. It's a valid excuse. But we don't give parents. And so I think that by adding the right of conscience, religious freedom code, that does give them a voice in whether or not an absence is valid as defined by the rule. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Member Earl and we have Vice Chair Wood. Vice Chair Wood.
Can I ask a question to Deputy Superintendent Nui? Yeah, so the current definition is in code. Is it appropriate to add in something at the beginning, or would it be better at the end when it's in code already as stated in the rule and in code? It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, it does not matter.
Thank you. So the motion before the committee, apologies, motion before the board is to amend line 64 to add a new I, which states any reason made pursuant to 53G-10-205. With no questions, let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that looks like it passes with the votes of 12 in favor and 2 opposed, being members Lear and member Reel. Okay, so we are at an underlying motion here that the board approve R277-607 absenteeism and truancy prevention, draft 1 as amended on second and final reading. Let's go ahead and tee that up for a vote. And that passes with the 13 in favor, 1 opposed, and the no vote being member Bogus. Chair Earl.
At the very next item, as soon as I get into my, we have no more amendments? My gosh, I guess we just voted on that, huh? Okay, sorry. We are on the school climate survey amendments, and yeah, stay there at least. There's a little explanation on this one. This one actually, we are passing it because of the 5-year continuation needs to be done this month, but there is some more work to be done on this. So we're passing the rule as it is, and we are continuing to work on it over the next couple of months with an update to come forward, if that makes sense, so that we're in alignment with that we have to submit, and this is the month for submitting for the 5-year, so that we're in compliance, but we will continue to be working on it. So I'm just giving that out for people why they're wondering it's here, and then in committee as well. Anyways, let me make the motion. So the motion before the body is that the board approve R277-623 School Climate Survey, Draft 2 on second and final reading.
Thank you, Chair Earl. The motion before the board is that the board approve R277-623 School Climate Survey, Draft 2 on second and final reading. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote.
Cindy's stepped out.
Okay, that passes with a vote of 10 in favor, 1 opposed, the no vote being member Bogus, and we have member Kelly, member Davis, member Hart, and member Lear absent. So, Chair Earl.
Yes, okay, and the last item I believe on our agenda for standards and assessment is just an update to one of our structural materials rubrics. And let me get the motion before us. So the motion is that the board approve the instructional rubric, draft 4.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approve the instructional material rubric, draft 4. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote. It looks like that passes with 10 in favor, 1 in opposition, the no vote being member Bogus. And then again, we have member Kelly, member Davis, member Lear, and Vice Chair Hart absent. Chair Earl.
And you know what? I'm so excited to tell you we are done with standards and assessment. So
I think we're more excited to hear it.
yes, you are. You
It's
are,
great.
I'm sure.
We got some good work done though.
Yeah, I would say this, just information on some of these items that are in standards and assessment over the next month. If there's amendments and things that people have after we have our meeting, I think a lot of the board members would love to help engage, see if we can create some streamlinedness next month. So, especially like on the climate survey, if there's some questions there. So,
I appreciate that. I think as a, with the opportunity to serve as a committee chair, it was very helpful when we voted on something in committee, if we didn't get feedback then, to have it between that committee meeting and the board meeting so that we could come to this meeting prepared and be as efficient as possible. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate, again, the work that's been happening here. Let me lay out what's happening here. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Have to have the committee drafts 3 business days after the close of the committee meeting. Because if we don't know what the committee drafts say, we can't engage on a committee draft that's being brought to the full board.
Thank you. Let me share what's happening here. We have 4 members who are gone. Some are saying, hey, we might need a break. We do have dinner scheduled at 5:45, is that right? And so that's in 30 minutes. So we can take a break, or we can keep going for 30 minutes. Keep going for 30 minutes is what I'm getting. So